Life and death. The Torah portion, Chaye Sarah, means the life of Sarah, but it actually describes her death. And in that same portion, Abraham dies. And in the Haftorah for that week, King David is dying. So there's a lot of death in a portion that's called life. It's the one portion that has the word life in it. Just heard a presentation by one of the preeminent sociologists of American Judaism, who's the new chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, Professor Arnold Eisen. And he talked about a book he wrote called The Jew Within, and studies with Stephen Cohn, who's another prominent Jewish sociologist, in assessing the American Jewish mentality. And they talked about how outside of Orthodoxy now, the vast majority of American Jews have something called the sovereign self, where they believe that they can pick and choose in Judaism, that if they find something meaningful, it's meaningful, and if they don't, they reject it, and no one has a right to tell them how to be Jewish. And another aspect they discovered is that Jews do not feel linked to other world. Half the Jews in studies don't feel linked to other world Jews. They don't feel linked to the state of Israel. And we show declining signs of affiliation and involvement in Jewish life. And what he suggested was that we set a goal of increasing the number by 10% of Jews being active, and he highlighted day schools and summer camps and fixing Hebrew schools and creating better communities so people will find the pull to Judaism through their peers. Those are all well and good, but I find great signs of life in an area where the rabbis felt like we were hearing about death that were not discussed there, and things that we have to celebrate and also focus on besides the tried and true things that we toss out of day schools and camps that of course are important, and Hebrew schools which need to be improved. But there are other things we should celebrate. First of all, we need to really celebrate that in the last 100 years, women have taken a giant step forward in Jewish life. We have the president of our synagogue as a female, the vice president is a female. My wife runs big programs here. We have women rabbis and women cantors and women teaching Judaism in college campuses, women youth group leaders, women leading services, all kinds of involvement of women that need to be celebrated as a new enrichment in the Jewish scene, and especially the American Jewish scene. Second of all, converts. My wife's a former Lutheran minister, and now she teaches the only Jewish studies classes at a college nearby. She runs our conversion program, our singles program. She teaches a Mishnah class. This past Shabbat, we had a woman who converted to Judaism, and we celebrated their Ufruf. Another woman who converted, celebrated their first anniversary. We have to take a serious look at the role that converts are playing in revitalizing Jewish life. And this goes to my other video on kosher evangelizing, about the importance of bringing new people into Judaism to strengthen our numbers. Because there are millions and millions and millions of people that aren't really Christian. They're born into a non-Jewish family, but they're not church-going, believing people. They could be Jewish, and this is true around the world. Also, technology. The chancellor did say in the speech that we missed the cable age. We shouldn't miss this age. But in talking about communities, our kids may have a few close friends, but they may have 1,000 contacts on MySpace and Facebook. My videos have now gotten 150,000 hits between the various sites that they're on. There's all kinds of efforts online, on the internet and the web, to create Jewish learning and Jewish life. It has to be, a lot of resources have to be devoted to this effort. There are people in far-flung places that aren't connected. We can connect them in a virtual way if we can't connect them physically. And this is a great sign of progress. Another thing we have to talk about is the proliferation of studies on Jewish college campuses. When I went to the University of Chicago, we had biblical Hebrew and we had medieval Jewish history, but that was it. Today there's all kinds of courses. My son goes to college in the cornfields of Indiana, University of Indiana at Bloomington, and they've got one of the strongest Jewish educational programs in the country, and he's taking 2 Jewish courses now. And this is just a tip of the iceberg of 1,000 colleges that have Jewish courses. You can major in Jewish studies and minor in Jewish studies and get graduate degrees in all kinds of places. Used to be you had to go to the seminary to do it. And it started as Holocaust studies, but there's been a huge proliferation in this regard. So these are just some of the ways in which we see changes occurring. And how about Israel? because of the brilliance of Michael Steinhardt and jumping on board by other organizations in the state of Israel, 150,000 Jewish kids between 18 and 26 have had a free 10-day trip to Israel. Now, that has got to have some impact down the road to this number that more and more Jews have less of attachment to Israel, especially younger and younger. The brilliance of the idea of sending them to Israel is just phenomenal. So these are signs of life in a place where we see death. And so when you think about Parashat Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, and it disguises her death, of course, people die. How sad it was that this noble couple who were the first Jews and created Judaism and had this covenantal relationship with God, they passed the way of all living things. But in their wake, we now have real revitalization. Talk about Warsaw, where there's discussions of a huge skyscraper growing up in the old Warsaw ghetto, towering over the synagogue there, and it's going to be an expanded space for all kinds of Jewish activity for the revived Warsaw community. When a couple months ago, the biggest synagogue in Berlin reopened. Or an article the same day in the paper about how the ultra-Orthodox are growing so fast in Israel, it's having a real impact on the economy. And there's all kinds of products now that have to suit them, like telephones where you can't get on the internet, or you can't call any bad phone numbers, or all kinds of things like that. So there is real life, there is revitalization. Sure, we have threats of Iran and Hamas and assimilation, but let's also look at the bright spots. Life, l'chaim.